And one of the biggest reasons, the biggest motivation behind the writing of my book and revealing family secrets at my mother's memory, because I don't think you'll find anybody on this planet that says she wasn't a loving person. She was an amazingly loving person, the ultimate people pleaser. So you can't say anything wrong about this woman, no matter who you are. And yet she was up against what I'd say is the most evil people. They would do things to her. When somebody does something to you, it makes you angry. And then when you're angry, you look at life through negative eyes, and then you do negative things to your world. My mother was constantly faced with negative things being done to her. You know, she never, ever, ever turned on those angry glasses. You know, it was like her mind was constantly focused on see the good, see the good. She was also, what you could not put her down for is she still stood for what was right and what was wrong. She still spoke her mind. I believe she lost her mind. She stopped listening to everybody else because they stopped listening to her. Because she did speak. She did always speak up and protect me. She would stand in the way. So she wasn't one of those women that would have always seen the brighter side of life and let's just ignore all of the bad things in life. No, she wouldn't ignore what my brother did to her. You know, she would have had something to say that this was wrong. But she would say it in, timidly. She would voice her opinion. She'd be called angry and bitter and stupid, and she would have been put down with all of those put downs. But in her mind, I know that if there was a way she could have loved these people enough to be better people, she would have, but she didn't know how. If there was a way she could change her actions that would affect the actions of everybody else, she would have. But she just didn't have that information. And that information, I think, was greatly blocked because she was constantly told she was stupid. She would constantly say she was stupid. Yet she was the most brilliant person in the world. If that woman knew she was smart, she would have been able to figure out her answers of how to change my brother from not being a psychopath and how to heal my father. But she did have a lot of fears. And those fears and her inability to believe in herself, to be smarter, is, in the end, we all ultimately have to be responsible for why we're here on this planet. I mean, everybody's looking for, what's your purpose? Well, my mother's purpose was to live the experience she was and gain more information to try and end the family abuse and unite them. We all started as one. We're all supposed to end up as one. But in this life experience, it seems like we've been trying to detach family as much as possible. Through our hates. It's like we're living in a world of hell. This is hell. We're trying to get to heaven. The only way to get to heaven is if we all have one like mind. If we all are seeing through the same love glasses. I do believe in unconditional love. I love my brother, my sister-in-law, my niece and nephew. I love them enough to say what you did is wrong, and putting other people down is wrong, and lying about me is wrong. And I fully understand. See, I'm trying to be, that extension of my mother. And what happened is I am smarter than my mother and my father because I have both their mindsets. I share both their DNA. So how my father thinks is very much how I think. But the love and the glasses and the senses that I received was from my mother. So, and you could see that with each generation, it doesn't mean, like, you can see females having male-dominated senses, that they're acting like males. So you can't say, oh, this is a male trait. There's very big possibility that my niece could repeat the pattern of her father and not necessarily my nephew. It doesn't necessarily have to be either one of them. But It only makes logic sense to me that if you walk and talk and say, a psychopath is a hero, if you say that, how your father treated your grandmother and the rest of the family is a good and honorable way of living life, as long as you're saying that, then you're living the same way. And if you're living the same way and all of your actions are causing the early deaths of people, you're causing harm to other people, then you are repeating the same freaking pattern. Even if an aunt is saying, hey, you're a psychopath, don't get angry that I'm saying that. Don't prove. The best way of doing that is saying, well, what would make you say that? And find my logic, and then give the opportunity to arise for you to say, no, I think what my father did was dead wrong. And then as soon as you say, no, I think what he did is dead wrong, and you're allowed to walk and talk, not just have it in your head, but you actually say it out loud and make it real, then you're living a changed life. But it doesn't mean you hate your father. When I told my niece not to get into cars at parties with people that are drinking as much as your father, that was not to make her go against her father. Those are what my brother's seen in his eyes, is that I was trying to turn his kids against him. Everything he's doing is causing me to, do the same thing, cause his kids to go against him. He's creating his biggest fears, because I have the same mindset as him, and I can see the patterns, and the patterns make me talk about his children, his pride and gold. Like, these are the most valuable thing on the planet is his son, not so much his daughter, his son. So when you put the target on his son, did I put the target on his son, or did he? When I talk about family patterns and them repeating, he knew perfectly well that if, he was to do these actions, I would question them. I would talk about it. I would talk about every secret he has. He knew about this. So the level at this type of video, the honor that I see in my mother is for her to never turn on hateful senses while dealing with nothing but hate. To still be a loving person during that stance. That says a lot more about how loving a person she is when you've seen the challenges it took her to be a loving person. So I have that. There's no question. I have my mother's views of seeing life through loving eyes. I do not wish anybody any harm, but I want the harm stopped. So I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to sit and watch. I'm not going to pretend, oh, yeah, let's just let them do what they want and God's going to save me after I'm killed. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in Bibles. I believe God was pretty pissed off when people killed his son. And I believe there was a little bit of words of wisdom that followed Jesus' death. So, patterns within patterns. I think the way we need to act is more God-like during somebody's death. So that's where I'm trying to walk. It's like, okay, what would God do? Would God hate my brother for his actions? No. Jesus even said, forgive them for they know not what they are doing. My brother did not know what he was doing. I can forgive him for that. But it doesn't mean we don't talk and say that killing is the right thing to do. I do believe God came with a lot of wisdom that says, do not kill your family. So I would rather I would rather listen to God than a Bible that tells you to just allow killers to be killers. It doesn't mean we go to war. I do not believe any aspect of a Bible that says go to war and kill evil, because in my mind, the person that's killing is evil. And going to war means I got to put hateful eyes. I have to put glasses on to be able to kill my enemy. And it doesn't matter whether I have a gun. I suffered from emotional abuse. I know that my words have an impact to affect my brother's mental health. So I know the dangers of putting these labels on there. I'm totally against labels. I'm looking at, well, what caused my brother to behave this way? Because there's an outside force someplace on him that's making this happen that needs to be stopped. There's an outside forces that are going to make my nephew turn into the person that he's going to be. Just like there's outside forces that are turning me to talk about the things that I'm talking about. So there, everything happens for a reason. It is sad, and my mother's death is causal. But when you really, really understand what I understand, every single person on this planet was murdered. There's nobody that wasn't killed. We've all influenced somebody else's death in one way, shape, or form or another. Even me pointing a finger at, question whether there's somebody killing another person, to say those words has the potential to, cause some pain for another person. And pain is humanity's biggest enemy. So it is a matter of, would you rather be in pain from us all dying, or would you rather be in pain from us all telling the truth? I'd rather die in truth than in the lie. I don't want to end up like my mother, where she died and everybody was telling a lie. I have a cousin that is like, she admits she knows nothing about abuse, but then she goes and writes a whole long letter about abuse, and that, oh no, my mother was, if she wanted to leave, she could leave. I'm saying it's impossible to leave. I'm one of them that proves you can't leave abuse. I'm on, and I mean, let's sort of understand what the word leaving abuse is. I'd like to leave abuse and have a safe life. Did I leave abuse and was safe? No, the abuse escalated. I'm on a welfare system. I'm crippled. And my mother was facing death threats, so she wouldn't have been crippled. She would have been murdered. There was no escaping that level of abuse. Not when you have two that will, prove at the end of the day they were willing to kill her. So I do think at the end of the day, I've also seen somebody else have a post on, they had somebody that's really evil in their life, and we are a oneness. That's when you're trying to find the answers to everything, and you look at, well, what's the end picture? The end picture of what you want is to be able to get along with these people. The picture at the end of the day is that you don't want to attract these type of people. So we all have to sort of, like, in my mind, it's like everybody on the planet has to be in the same room. So if I'm saying, hey, you walk away from killers, like I walked away from my mom and my father, I knew that, well, it would have been more dangerous for my mom if I stayed. But running away didn't keep them alive. You have to be in the same room with these people. So you have to have a peace table. So leaving is not the answer. Pushing people away is not the answer. It's how do you love, and how do you have that peace table that says, this is a loving act. I feel your love. Do you feel the love I'm sending out? You have to always be concentrating. This is what I do anyways, is when you're in a really angry state, you got to look at, well, what's the end picture? What is it you really want at the end of the day? At the end of the day, I just want my mother's story to be told. It's going to be painful. I don't want my brother to suffer. I want him to change. I want him to take those hateful glasses off and see that life could be wonderful. Everybody's going to be traumatized. You're going to be traumatized because there are global things that are wrong. Saying that they're wrong and just dying from it ain't going to solve any problem. You got to put your loving glasses on. You got to face everything that's wrong in the world, and you got to walk in, well, what could possibly be right? How do we do this? And do it together lovingly. That's what I'd like to see within my family unit. That's what I'd like to see on a global experience. So, at the end of the day, if I learned how to love a planet on a global scale, it would have been through my mother. So, She's going to be a lot in my talks, and so is my family. And they're all worried about me talking about them. And it's like, look, I am the painter painting the family portrait. How you want to stand in that picture is up to you. But I am the one that's going to paint the picture. So